Derek Walsh pulled his cargo hauler into docking bay 17 and killed the engines. Through the viewport, he could see dozens of alien species moving through the massive trade station called Harmony. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Their scales, fur, and skin came in every color imaginable. This was his first solo delivery run since Earth joined the galactic community 6 months ago, and he wanted it to go smoothly. He checked the specialized transport container in the back. Through the reinforced glass panel, he could see Brutus lying still, conserving energy like always. The 15-foot saltwater crocodile had been Derek's companion for 3 years, ever since he rescued the injured reptile from poachers in northern Australia. Now they went everywhere together, even into space. Derek opened the cargo bay door and stepped onto the station floor. The artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth normal, making his steps feel bouncy. He was pulling the transport container behind him on a hover platform when he heard the laughter start. "Look at the tiny one," a deep voice rumbled in the universal translator embedded in Derek's ear. "Is that supposed to be a traitor?" Derek looked up to see 3 massive aliens blocking his path. They stood at least 10 feet tall, covered in thick brown scales that looked like armor plates. Their eyes were yellow and cold, and their mouths were filled with sharp teeth. The translator identified them as Kralix, one of the dominant trading species in this sector. The largest one, wearing some kind of rank insignia on his chest, stepped forward. His clawed feet scraped against the metal floor. "I am Grath, and this is our station. Small creatures like you need protection here. It would be unfortunate if something happened to your cargo." Other aliens stopped to watch. Some were tall and thin with blue skin, others were stocky with 4 arms. They all seemed amused by the confrontation. Derek had read about this in the briefings. The Kralix controlled several major trade routes through intimidation. Most species paid their fees rather than risk conflict. Derek kept his voice calm. "I have proper docking permits and cargo clearance. I'm just here to make a delivery and leave." Grath laughed and his companions joined in. The sound echoed through the docking bay. "Permits, how adorable. The little mammal thinks papers will protect him." He leaned down, bringing his massive head close to Derek's face. His breath smelled like rotten meat. "Your kind only joined the galaxy recently. You don't understand how things work yet. Pay the fee or we take your cargo as payment." Derek felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to stay relaxed. Getting angry wouldn't help. "I'm not paying any unofficial fees. Now please move aside." The crowd around them grew larger. Derek could hear whispers and more laughter. A few aliens were placing bets on what would happen next. To them, this was entertainment. A small human standing up to the mighty Kralix was comedy. Grath's yellow eyes narrowed. "You dare refuse me? Perhaps you need a lesson in respect." He reached out with one clawed hand, clearly intending to grab Derek by the throat. Derek didn't flinch. Instead, he tapped a control on his wrist device. "Last warning, step back." This made Grath pause for just a moment, confused by the human's confidence. Then he laughed even harder. "What will you do, tiny creature? Call for help. There is no one here who will challenge us." One of Grath's companions, a slightly smaller Kralix with a scar across his snout, pointed at the transport container. "What's in the box? More of your pathetic human trade goods." Derek glanced back at the container. He could see movement through the glass now. Brutus was awake and alert. The crocodile's prehistoric eyes were watching the Kralix with the patience of a predator who had waited millions of years to perfect the art of the ambush. "Not trade goods," Derek said quietly. "That's my companion." The Kralix erupted in fresh laughter. Several other species joined in. The idea that a human would bring a companion to a trade station seemed ridiculous to them. Most galactic species traveled alone or in professional crews. The concept of bonding with another creature was foreign to them. Grath wiped his eyes in an exaggerated gesture of amusement. "A companion? What is it, another tiny mammal to keep you warm at night?" He turned to address the crowd. "The humans bring pets to do business. How primitive." Derek felt a familiar anger building in his chest, but he pushed it down. These aliens didn't understand Earth or its creatures. They had no context for what they were mocking. That was about to change. He walked past Grath to the transport container and placed his hand on the release panel. The crowd pressed closer, curious. Now, despite their laughter, they wanted to see what kind of pathetic creature the small human considered a companion. Derek looked back at Grath one more time. "I tried to warn you, remember that?" Then he pressed the release button, and the container door began to open. The hydraulic door hissed as it lowered, forming a ramp. For a moment, nothing happened. The crowd leaned forward, expecting some small, furry creature to emerge. Then they saw the scales. Brutus moved with deliberate slowness, each step calculated and precise. His massive body filled the doorway as he emerged into the station's lights. 15 feet of prehistoric predator, covered in thick armored scales that had protected his species for over 200 million years. His tail, nearly half his body length, dragged behind him with enough mass to break bones. The laughter died in patches as different aliens processed what they were seeing. Brutus's yellow eyes, so similar to the Kralliks but far older in their design, scanned the crowd with cold intelligence. His mouth remained closed, but everyone could see the slight bulge of powerful jaw muscles beneath his scales. Grath recovered first, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "That's your companion, some kind of lizard?" He looked at his fellow Kralliks, forcing a laugh. "It's smaller than we are, barely impressive." Derek stepped beside Brutus and placed a hand on the crocodile's rough hide. The gesture was casual, showing a comfort level that made several aliens step backward. "This is Brutus. He's a saltwater crocodile from Earth, one of the apex predators from my world." "Apex predator?" the scarred Krallik snorted. "On a world of tiny mammals, perhaps. Here among real species, he is nothing special." He gestured at his own impressive bulk. "Our kind have dominated the trade routes for centuries through strength. Your lizard would be prey on our homeworld." Brutus's eyes tracked to the speaker. The crocodile didn't move otherwise, but there was something in that gaze that made the scarred Kralliks' words trail off. It was the look of something that had never been prey in its entire evolutionary history. Derek kept his hand on Brutus, a calming presence. "Saltwater crocodiles can grow to 20 feet long. Brutus is still young. They're ambush predators that can take down prey much larger than themselves. On Earth, they're known for being patient, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless when they strike." A new alien pushed through the crowd. She was tall and thin, with purple skin and 4 eyes arranged vertically on her narrow face. Her translator tag identified her as a Thrin, one of the galaxy's scientific species. "Earth," she said slowly, accessing a data pad. "That's classified as a—" Her 4 eyes widened. "A Class 7 death world." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Even Grath seemed uncertain now. Deathworld classifications were known throughout the galaxy. They were places where evolution ran wild, where survival required constant adaptation, where every creature was either predator or prey. Most civilized species came from Class 2 or 3 worlds, where life was abundant but manageable. "That can't be right," Grath said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No species from a Class 7 world could develop space travel. The mortality rate would be too high." Derek smiled without humor. "Humans didn't just develop space travel. We developed agriculture, medicine, art, and philosophy, all while sharing our world with creatures like Brutus. We didn't have the luxury of a safe evolution. We had to become smart, adaptable, and tough just to survive childhood." The Thrin scientist was reading rapidly from her data pad now, her voice growing more alarmed. "Earth's gravity is 1.2 galactic standard. Temperature variations of over 100 degrees in a single rotation. Massive predators in every ecological zone. Microscopic organisms that can kill within hours. Toxic plant species. Venomous animals. Extreme weather patterns including cyclones, earthquakes, and volcanic activity." She looked up at Derek with what might have been respect or fear. "How did your species survive?" "We adapted," Derek said simply. "And we learned to work with our environment instead of against it. Brutus here. His ancestors existed before mammals even evolved. They survived the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs. They've been perfecting the art of predation for millions of years longer than most species in this galaxy have existed. Grath tried to regain control of the situation. Pretty words, human, but words don't make your pet dangerous. He's just a large lizard. Derek sighed. He had hoped to avoid this, but the Kralix's pride wouldn't allow him to back down peacefully. Brutus isn't a pet, he's a partner, and he's not a lizard, he's a crocodilian. The difference matters. One of Grath's companions, emboldened by his leader's words, stepped forward. I'll prove he's harmless. The Kralix reached out with one clawed hand toward Brutus's head, intending to push the crocodile aside like a minor obstacle. Brutus's response was instantaneous. His mouth opened, revealing rows of conical teeth designed for gripping and tearing. The hiss that emerged from his throat was unlike anything the aliens had heard before. It was the sound of compressed air mixed with a rumbling growl, a warning that had made mammals flee in terror for millions of years. The Kralix jerked his hand back so fast he nearly fell over. The crowd scattered backward, creating a wide circle around Derek and Brutus. Even Grath took an involuntary step away from the crocodile's open jaws. Derek spoke into the sudden silence. That was a warning. Brutus doesn't give many of those. I suggest you all remember that he's not just for show. He's here because on Earth we learned that respect goes both ways. I respect his space and his nature. In return, he trusts me. It's a relationship most of you probably can't understand. Grath's scales had paled slightly, but his pride was still wounded. A simple threat display? My people do the same. It proves nothing about actual capability. Derek met the Kralix's yellow eyes with his own steady gaze. You want proof? Fine. But I'm only going to demonstrate once, and I'm not demonstrating on anyone living. Choose something you want destroyed, and Brutus will show you what a real Deathworld predator can do. The scarred Kralix laughed nervously and pointed at a nearby cargo crate. It was made of standard station alloy, the same material used in hull plating for most civilian ships. The crate was about 3 feet on each side and marked with warning symbols for heavy contents. That! Let your lizard try to damage that. Our own teeth can barely scratch such metal. Derek looked at Brutus and gave a subtle hand signal. The crocodile moved forward with surprising speed for something so large, covering the distance to the crate in 3 powerful strides. His body stayed low to the ground, tail swinging for balance. When he reached the crate, he paused and opened his jaws wide. The aliens got their first real look at Brutus's teeth. They weren't like the Kralix's sharp fangs designed for tearing. These were thick, conical pegs designed for one purpose, crushing. With overwhelming force, there were over 60 of them, arranged in rows that interlocked when the jaws closed. Brutus's head lowered to the crate. His jaws closed around one corner of the metal container. Then his jaw muscles, refined by millions of years of evolution, contracted. The sound of shrieking metal filled the docking bay. The alloy crate crumpled like paper in Brutus's jaws. The crocodile shook his head once, a movement so fast it blurred, and the entire corner of the crate tore away. Pieces of metal fell to the floor with sharp clanging sounds. The contents of the crate, some kind of crystalline ore, spilled across the deck. Brutus opened his jaws and let the twisted metal fall. It hit the ground with a heavy thud, leaving deep tooth marks in the supposedly strong alloy. The crocodile returned to Derek's side and settled into a resting position, as calm as if nothing had happened. The silence was absolute. Every alien in the docking bay stared at the destroyed crate. The Thrin scientist's hands trembled as she worked her data pad, running calculations. 3,700 pounds per square inch, she said quietly, then louder. His bite force is 3,700 pounds per square inch. That's, she looked up at the crowd. That's enough force to crush the bones of any species on this station. Our medical technology couldn't repair that kind of damage. Grath stared at his own scaled arm, then at the mangled crate. His armor plating, which he had always trusted to protect him, suddenly seemed very thin. Derek continued in the same calm voice. Saltwater crocodiles have the strongest bite force of any living creature on Earth, But that's not what makes them dangerous. What makes them dangerous is their hunting method. They wait. Sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. They study their prey's patterns. Then when the prey is at its most vulnerable, they strike. One bite to secure the grip, then they drag their prey underwater and drown it. If the prey is too large to drown, they perform what's called a death roll. Death roll? The Thrin scientist looked horrified and fascinated at the same time. Brutus, demonstrate, Derek said, pointing at the remaining piece of the crate. The crocodile moved to the larger section of crate that was still intact. He gripped it in his jaws, then his entire body began to spin. The rotation was so fast and powerful that the metal screamed in protest. Brutus rolled 3 complete turns in less than 2 seconds. When he stopped, the crate had been twisted into an unrecognizable spiral of tortured metal. The death roll, Derek explained, generates massive tearing force. It's used to rip chunks of meat from prey too large to eat whole. The rotational force, combined with that bite strength, can dismember most creatures in seconds. Several aliens in the crowd made sounds of distress. A few turned and walked away quickly. The betting that had been happening earlier stopped completely. No one was laughing anymore. Grath found his voice, though it shook slightly. This is one creature, an anomaly. Surely not all of Earth is like this. The Thrin scientist looked up from her data pad, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief. I've been reading the Earth database. This creature, as terrifying as it is not alone. Earth has creatures called sharks with multiple rows of replaceable teeth, creatures called bears that weigh over half a ton and can run faster than most galactic species, venomous snakes that can kill with a single bite, insects that work in colonies of millions, bacteria that can't be seen and cause deadly diseases, plants that can poison or trap animals. She paused, her voice dropping to an awed whisper. And humans evolved alongside all of this. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Another alien, this one resembling a large bird with blue feathers, spoke up. But how? How does any species develop civilization under such conditions? Derek smiled grimly. We learn to cooperate. Humans are pack hunters by nature. We share information, develop tools, and work together. We also learn something most galactic species apparently didn't. We learn to work with other species. Work with? Grath looked confused. You mean you enslaved them? No, Derek said firmly. We partnered with them. Dogs, for example. They're descended from wolves, another of Earth's apex predators. Thousands of years ago, humans and wolves formed an alliance. We hunted together, protected each other, and evolved side by side. Now dogs are humanity's most loyal companions. We did the same with horses for transportation, cats for pest control, and birds for hunting. We didn't conquer Earth's creatures. We learned to live with them, respect them, and when possible, befriend them. He placed his hand on Brutus's head again. The gesture was gentle, showing trust. Brutus could kill me in seconds if he wanted to. I know this. He knows I know this. But we have an understanding built on mutual respect. I provide food, safety, and companionship. He provides protection and partnership. It's not ownership, it's cooperation. The crowd processed this information in stunned silence. The concept was foreign to most of them. Their species had either eliminated their predators or evolved on worlds without serious threats. The idea of deliberately maintaining a relationship with something that could kill you was beyond their understanding. Grath looked at his companions, then back at Derek. His pride was wounded, but something else showed in his yellow eyes now. It might have been respect, or it might have been fear. The protection fee, he said slowly. Consider it waived for you and any other human trader. Derek nodded. Appreciated. Now I have a delivery to make, if you'll excuse us. The crowd parted immediately, creating a wide path. Derek and Brutus moved through the docking bay toward the station's interior. Behind them, the aliens began talking rapidly, their voices rising in excitement and fear as they discussed what they had just witnessed. The galaxy was learning a new lesson today. The small humans from the death world called Earth were not to be underestimated. 3 hours later, Derek completed his delivery to a merchant on the station's upper levels. The merchant, A friendly being covered in soft gray fur had heard about the incident in the docking bay. She asked to see Brutus from a safe distance and seemed more curious than afraid. Derek appreciated the reaction. Not everyone needed to fear Earth's creatures. They just needed to understand and respect them. As Derek and Brutus made their way back toward the docking bay, he noticed something had changed. Aliens still moved out of their path, but now they stopped to stare openly. Some took pictures with their devices. A few brave ones asked questions about Earth and its wildlife. Derek answered when he could, trying to be an ambassador for his world. Near a viewing port that showed the stars beyond the station, the Thrin scientist from earlier approached. She moved carefully, keeping a respectful distance from Brutus. "Human Derek, may I speak with you? My name is Lyra and I study xenobiology." Derek stopped and gestured for her to continue. Brutus settled onto the floor, watching the constant flow of station traffic with patient eyes. "I've spent the last 2 hours researching Earth," Lyra said, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "The data is overwhelming. Your world shouldn't have produced a spacefaring civilization. The statistical probability is nearly 0. "But we're here," Derek said with a slight smile. "Yes, you are, and that's what makes it remarkable." Lyra pulled up a holographic display from her data pad. It showed Earth rotating slowly, blue and green and white. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds classified between Class 1 and Class 3. Minimal predation, stable climates, abundant resources. They had the luxury of developing culture and technology without constant survival pressure. Derek nodded. "I've read the reports. Earth's a Class 7. The highest classification before a world is considered completely uninhabitable," Lyra confirmed. "But here's what fascinates me. Most Deathworld species, when they do achieve sentience, become either extremely aggressive or extremely fearful. They see threats everywhere because their evolution taught them that everything is dangerous. But humans are different." "How so?" Lyra manipulated the display, bringing up images of various Earth animals. Dogs, horses, cats, birds, even dolphins. "You befriended your predators. You domesticated creatures that could harm you. You developed empathy for other species despite living in an environment that should have taught you to trust nothing. This suggests an unusual psychological adaptability." A small crowd was gathering to listen to the conversation. Derek noticed several species he hadn't seen before, all keeping a wary distance from Brutus. The crocodile ignored them completely, comfortable in his stillness. "Humans had to cooperate to survive," Derek explained. "A single human is actually pretty weak compared to most of Earth's predators. We don't have thick hides, sharp claws, or venomous bites. What we have is intelligence, endurance, and the ability to work together. Our ancestors figured out that cooperation was the key to survival. That lesson extended to other species when it made sense." Lyra's eyes gleamed with scientific curiosity. "And this creature? How did humans come to partner with such a dangerous predator?" Derek looked down at Brutus fondly. "Not all crocodiles work with humans. Brutus is special. I found him injured when he was younger, caught in an illegal trap. I spent months helping him heal, never forcing interaction, always respecting his space. Eventually, he decided to trust me. It doesn't work with every animal. You can't force a bond with a predator. They have to choose you as much as you choose them." A new voice interrupted, harsh and angry. "Lies and tricks." Grath pushed through the crowd, his scales darker with agitation. 2 other Kralliks flanked him, different from the ones Derek had met earlier. "I've been investigating your claims, human. I spoke with other species who know of Earth. They say your kind are dangerous, that you fight wars among yourselves, that you've developed weapons capable of destroying entire worlds." The crowd muttered nervously. Derek felt tension creep into his shoulders but kept his voice level. "Yes, humans have fought wars. We've made terrible mistakes. We've hurt each other and our world. We're not perfect, Grath. No species is, but we've also learned from those mistakes. We've built organizations to prevent wars, developed medicine to heal, created art to inspire. We're complicated, just like every other species in the galaxy." "Complicated," Grath spat. "A convenient word for dangerous. You bring a monster onto this station and destroy property to intimidate us." Now you pretend to be peaceful. Which is the real human, the warrior, or the diplomat? Derek considered the question seriously. Both. Humans are both. We can be gentle and we can be fierce. We can create beauty and we can wage war. The same hands that build homes can build weapons. The same minds that write poetry can design battle strategies. We contain multitudes, Grath. That's what makes us human. Brutus shifted slightly, responding to the tension in Derek's voice. The movement was subtle, but every alien in the area noticed. Several backed away further. Grath's yellow eyes fixed on the crocodile. And what about him? Can he be gentle, or is he just a weapon you use to threaten others? Derek knelt beside Brutus and ran his hand along the crocodile's rough scales. "Watch," he said softly. He reached into his supply bag and pulled out a chunk of frozen fish. Holding it in his open palm, he offered it to Brutus. The crocodile's massive jaws opened. Those teeth, which had crushed metal hours earlier, carefully took the fish from Derek's hand. Brutus could have bitten off Derek's fingers without effort. Instead, his grip was precise and controlled. He swallowed the fish and closed his mouth, then settled his head back onto the floor. "Control," Derek said, standing up. "Brutus has the power to be dangerous, but he chooses when and how to use it. Just like humans, just like I suspect every intelligent species. The capacity for violence doesn't define you. What defines you is what you choose to do with that capacity." Lyra was recording everything on her data pad, her scientific excitement obvious. "This is revolutionary. The implications for galactic society are enormous. If humans can form working relationships with Deathworld predators, what else might they accomplish?" Grath's aggressive posture hadn't changed, but Derek saw something else in his eyes now. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. "You speak of choice, human, but when your kind feel threatened, what will you choose? When the galaxy learns to fear you, as they're learning today, will you choose peace or violence?" Derek met the Kralix's gaze steadily. "That depends on what the galaxy chooses first. Humans didn't come here looking for conflict. We came hoping for cooperation, trade, and friendship, but we also came prepared. Earth taught us to hope for the best while preparing for the worst. It's how we survived. It's how we'll continue to survive." The crowd was silent, processing this exchange. The tension hung in the air like static electricity, ready to spark in any direction. Then Grath did something unexpected. He lowered his head in what might have been a gesture of respect. "I understand now why the galaxy will struggle with your kind. You are not what we expected. Not weak, but not simple either." Derek nodded slowly. "None of us are simple, Grath. Not humans, not Kralix, not any species here. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Maybe the galaxy needs to learn that size and strength aren't the only measures of power." Over the next 2 days, Derek's presence on Harmony Station became something of a phenomenon. Word of the human and his crocodile spread through the station's communication networks. Aliens from different sectors came specifically to see Brutus. Some were scientists like Lyra, others were merchants curious about Earth's potential trade goods, and a few were simply travelers fascinated by the novelty. Derek found himself answering the same questions repeatedly. Yes, Earth has many dangerous creatures. No, humans don't live in constant fear. Yes, we have families and children and normal lives. No, we're not all warriors. The questions revealed how little the galaxy understood about Deathworlds and the species that evolved on them. On the third morning, Derek was eating breakfast at a station cafe when Grath approached alone. The large Kralix moved carefully, aware that his earlier aggression had damaged his reputation. Other aliens in the cafe tensed, but Grath kept his distance and his posture neutral. "Human Derek, may I join you?" Derek gestured to the reinforced chair across from him. Brutus, resting beside the table, watched the Kralix with unblinking eyes but showed no aggression. "Go ahead." Grath settled into the chair, which creaked under his weight. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He just watched Derek eat something the station's food synthesizer had attempted to make into scrambled eggs. The results were edible but not particularly good. "I have been thinking," Grath finally said, "about strength. My people pride ourselves on physical power. We are large, armored, and feared throughout the trade routes. This has served us well for generations, but watching you and your companion has made me question what strength really means. Derek swallowed his food and took a drink of synthetic coffee. How so? You are small by galactic standards. Your companion, while dangerous, is not the largest predator I've encountered. Yet you command respect, not through fear alone, but through competence. You handle him with confidence. You speak with authority. You don't boast or threaten unnecessarily. This is a different kind of strength than what I know. Derek leaned back in his chair. Strength comes in many forms. Physical power is one form, but there's also mental strength, emotional strength, social strength. Humans learned early that we couldn't rely solely on physical power. We weren't the biggest or fastest or strongest creatures on Earth, so we developed other forms of strength: intelligence, cooperation, adaptability, endurance. Grath nodded slowly. On my world, physical weakness is shameful. The strong lead and the weak follow. It is simple and clear. But does it work? Derek asked gently. Does having the biggest muscles make someone the best leader, the best problem solver, the best friend? The Kralix's scales shifted in a pattern Derek had learned indicated. Discomfort. No, Grath admitted. Not always. We have problems in our society. Leaders who rule through intimidation but lack wisdom. Conflicts that arise from pride rather than necessity. I had not considered that our way might be limited. Lyra entered the cafe at that moment, carrying her ever-present data pad. She approached their table with barely contained excitement. Derek, I need to show you something. The galactic communication networks have been flooded with questions about Earth. Other stations are reporting similar incidents. Humans arriving with various animals, dogs, horses, even birds, species that the galaxy has never encountered. It's causing quite a stir. She pulled up a holographic display showing various news feeds. Derek saw images of other humans at different stations, each with their own animal companions. A woman with a large dog that other aliens were carefully avoiding. A man with a hawk perched on his arm, its keen eyes scanning the crowd. Someone had even brought horses to a station with agricultural interests. The galaxy is fascinated and terrified in equal measure, Lyra continued. They're calling humans deathworlders and beast tamers. Some species are demanding restrictions on what animals humans can bring into galactic space. Others are requesting Earth join various trade councils immediately because they want access to your world's genetic diversity. Derek sighed. We're not trying to scare anyone. We just brought our companions with us when we joined the galaxy. But don't you see? Lyra's 4 eyes were bright with excitement. This is unprecedented. No other species maintains these kinds of relationships with dangerous creatures. Most species either exterminated their predators or evolved on worlds without significant threats. Humans did neither. You adapted, survived, and then befriended the very things that should have destroyed you. It's evolutionary poetry. Grath looked between Lyra and Derek. The galaxy will not know how to respond to this. Fear often leads to aggression or isolation. Humans may find themselves restricted or even unwelcome in some sectors. Then we'll deal with that if it happens, Derek said calmly. But we won't stop being who we are just because it makes others uncomfortable. Brutus is part of my life. He's not a weapon or a tool. He's my companion. I won't abandon him or hide him just to make others feel safer. The crocodile, hearing his name, lifted his head slightly. Derek reached down and touched his snout gently. The gesture of affection between human and apex predator was not lost on the watching aliens. A young alien approached their table hesitantly. She was small, barely reaching Derek's chest, with soft purple fur and large round eyes. Her species identification tag read Polari, a herbivorous species from a Class II world. "Excuse me," she said in a quiet voice. "I wanted to ask, is he really dangerous?" Derek smiled kindly. "Yes, he's dangerous. Brutus is one of the most efficient predators Earth ever produced. But dangerous doesn't mean evil. It just means capable of harm. Brutus chooses not to harm people under normal circumstances." "Can I?" The young Polari hesitated. "Can I take a picture? My family won't believe I saw a real Deathworld predator. Sure, but from a distance, please. Brutus doesn't like sudden movements from strangers. The young alien took her picture, thanked Derek profusely, and hurried away to share it with her friends. Within minutes, more aliens approached for pictures. Derek found himself becoming an impromptu guide, explaining Earth's ecology and answering questions about various animals. Grath watched this for a while, then stood to leave. You handle fame better than I would, human. Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach to strength after all. Grath, Derek called as the Kralliks turned to go. If you want to understand Earth better, I have some documentaries stored on my ship's computer. They show our world's ecosystems and how humans fit into them. You're welcome to watch them if you're interested. The large alien paused, considering, then he nodded. I would like that, thank you. As Grath left, Lyra sat down in his vacated chair. You're making allies, she observed. That's good. Humans will need friends in the galaxy. The road ahead won't be easy. Derek looked down at Brutus, who had closed his eyes and appeared to be sleeping despite the noise around them. The crocodile's calm presence was reassuring. We've survived worse, Derek said quietly. Earth taught us to adapt or die. We chose adaptation every time. The galaxy is just another environment to figure out. I hope you're right, Lyra said, because after today, nothing in the galaxy will ever look at humans the same way again. Derek smiled. Good, maybe it's time the galaxy learned that. Strength comes in many forms, and the smallest species can sometimes be the most dangerous. Not because we want to be, but because we had no choice but to become that way. Outside the cafe's viewing port, stars sparkled in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, Earth continued spinning, its dangerous beauty hidden in that small blue dot. And across the galaxy, other humans were introducing their companions to alien species, one station at a time, changing perceptions with every encounter. The age of the Deathworlders had begun. 2 weeks after the incident on Harmony Station, Derek received an official communication. It bore the seal of the Galactic Trade Council, one of the most powerful organizations in known space. They wanted to meet with him, not to reprimand him as he had initially feared, but to discuss opportunities. The meeting took place in a conference room on the station's administrative level. The room was large, designed to accommodate species of various sizes. Derek arrived with Brutus, who had become something of a station mascot in recent days. Several council members were already present, representing different species and interests. The council chair was a being named Horvath, tall and thin with skin that shimmered like oil on water. His species, the Quinnell, were known for their diplomatic skills and fair judgments. Human Derek Walsh, thank you for meeting with us, and thank you for bringing your companion. We're curious to observe him in a more formal setting. Derek took a seat at the table. Brutus settled beside him, as calm as ever. I'm happy to be here, though I'm not sure why I've been summoned. Horvath gestured to the other council members. Since your arrival, human activity in galactic space has increased dramatically. More of your kind are arriving weekly, many with animal companions. This has created both opportunities and concerns. We wanted to speak with someone who has experience navigating these interactions. Lyra was present at the meeting, Derek noticed. She gave him an encouraging nod from across the table. Another council member spoke up, a stocky being covered in blue scales. Some species are frightened by the creatures you bring. They worry about safety, about contamination, about unpredictability. How do we address these concerns? Derek considered his answer carefully. Education is the first step. Most fear comes from misunderstanding. Brutus is dangerous, yes, but he's also predictable. He has specific needs, behaviors, and responses. Any species that takes time to learn about him would understand how to coexist safely. The same applies to dogs, horses, and other Earth animals. But why bring them at all? Another council member asked. Surely humans can function without these companions. Can we function? Yes, Derek admitted. But why would we want to? These animals are part of our culture, our history, our identity. Dogs helped us hunt and guard our homes for thousands of years. Horses let us travel and farm. Cats protected our food supplies from pests. They're not just animals to us. They're partners, family even. Asking us to leave them behind is like asking us to abandon part of our humanity. Horvath leaned forward, yet other species manage without such attachments. Derek met his gaze steadily. Other species evolved differently. They had the luxury of safe worlds where cooperation with predators wasn't necessary. Earth didn't give us that luxury. We either learned to work with our environment or we died. The relationships we formed with animals weren't just convenience. They were survival strategies that became emotional bonds over generations. Lyra spoke up from her seat. If I may, Council Chair, my research suggests that human-animal bonds have significant psychological benefits. Humans who interact regularly with companion animals show lower stress levels, better emotional regulation, and stronger social connections. These bonds made humans more resilient as a species. They're not a weakness, they're actually a strength. Grath entered the room at that moment, causing several council members to shift nervously. The large Kralix had been invited as a representative of the merchant guilds. He nodded to Derek before taking a seat designed for his size. I have observed this human and others for 2 weeks, Grath said. Initially, I believed their companions were weapons meant to intimidate. I was wrong. The relationship between human and animal is complex. It involves trust, communication, and mutual benefit. My people could learn from this model. Horvath looked surprised. The Kralix rarely admit to learning from other species, especially smaller ones. Grath's scales darkened slightly, and what Derek had learned was embarrassment. Pride has limited us. Watching Derek has shown me that strength and size are not the only valuable traits. Humans succeeded on a death world not through being the biggest, but through being smart, adaptable, and cooperative. These traits serve them well in galactic society, too. The council members exchanged glances. The meeting was not going the way some of them had expected. Horvath turned back to Derek. The council has received numerous requests. Some species want to ban Deathworld animals from their stations. Others want to learn more about Earth's ecology. Still others want to establish trade relationships focused specifically on Earth's biological diversity. How would humanity respond to these various requests? Derek took a deep breath. This was a bigger question than he was qualified to answer, but he would do his best. Humans understand fear. We've been afraid of many things throughout our history. We respect that other species might need time to adjust to our presence and our companions. However, we won't accept blanket discrimination. If a station has legitimate safety protocols that apply equally to all species, we'll follow them. But if rules are made specifically to exclude humans because of prejudice or fear, we'll challenge those rules through proper channels. He paused, gathering his thoughts. As for trade, Earth has a lot to offer, not just biological resources, but knowledge. We've spent millennia learning to work with difficult environments and dangerous creatures. That expertise could be valuable for exploring hostile planets, establishing colonies in challenging conditions, or managing ecosystems. We're willing to share what we know, but we expect to be treated as equals, not curiosities or threats. Another council member, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, spoke in a melodic voice. Some fear that humans will use their animals as weapons. That concern has been raised multiple times. Derek looked at Brutus, then back at the council. Any tool can be a weapon if misused. Your species have ships that could be used to ram stations. You have industrial equipment that could be sabotaged. You have knowledge that could be weaponized. Do you restrict all of these things, or do you trust that most beings will use their resources responsibly? Humans will police our own. If someone misuses an animal companion, they'll face consequences from human authorities and galactic law. But don't punish all of us for potential crimes that haven't been committed. Horvath nodded slowly. A fair point. The Council will need to deliberate on these matters, but I believe we have enough information to begin forming policy recommendations. Human Derek, your testimony has been valuable. As the meeting concluded, various council members approached Derek with specific questions. Lyra asked if she could continue her research by visiting Earth. Grath mentioned that several Kralix merchants wanted to meet with human traders to discuss joint ventures. The atmosphere had shifted from suspicious to curious. When Derek finally left the conference room, he felt exhausted but hopeful. The galaxy was learning to see humans as more than just small creatures from a dangerous world. They were beginning to understand that Earth's challenges had forged something unique in humanity. Outside, he found a quiet observation deck and sat down. Brutus stretched out beside him, enjoying the warmth from the environmental controls. Through the massive window, Derek could see ships coming and going from the station. Some of them were human vessels now, marked with Earth's symbols. "We're really doing this," Derek said quietly to Brutus, "making a place for ourselves out here among the stars." The crocodile, of course, didn't answer, but his presence was answer enough. They had come a long way from Earth's rivers and swamps, from predator and prey to partners and friends. The relationship had evolved, but the core remained the same: mutual respect, understanding, and trust. A young human couple passed by the observation deck, walking a large dog. The dog wagged its tail happily, unbothered by the alien environment. Another human jogged past with a cat carrier, heading for the residential sections. Earth's children were bringing their companions to the stars, just as Derek had done. The galaxy would adjust. It had no choice. Humanity wasn't going to change who they were to fit someone else's expectations. They had survived Earth by being exactly who they needed to be: adaptable, cooperative, and tough. Those same traits would serve them well among the stars. Grath found Derek an hour later, still sitting at the observation deck. "I wanted to thank you properly," the Kralix said, settling down nearby with careful distance from Brutus. "You could have humiliated me completely that first day. You had the power and the justification. Instead, you showed restraint and offered education. That was unusual for me to experience." Derek smiled. "Earth taught us that making enemies is easy, making friends takes effort, but it's usually worth it." "My people have a saying," Grath said. "The strongest warrior is the one who never needs to fight. I always thought it was about intimidation. Now I understand it's about wisdom." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the station's activity. A Kralix and a human, unlikely friends brought together by circumstance and a 15-foot crocodile. It was strange, but then again, the galaxy was full of strange things. Somewhere on Earth, more humans were preparing to join the galactic community. They would bring their dogs, their cats, their horses, and their knowledge. They would face fear and prejudice just as Derek had, but they would also find curiosity, friendship, and opportunity. The age of humanity in space had truly begun, and they weren't arriving alone. They were bringing Earth with them in all its dangerous, beautiful, complicated glory. The galaxy would never be quite the same again. Derek looked down at Brutus, who was dozing in the warm light. "Thanks for being here, partner. Couldn't have done this without you." The crocodile opened one eye briefly, then closed it again. After 200 million years of evolution, Brutus and his kind had learned patience above all else. Whatever the future held, they would face it the same way they had faced everything else, with calm determination and the quiet confidence of survivors. It was, Derek reflected, a very human trait to share with one's companions. Perhaps that's what made the bond so strong. In the end, humans and their animals were all survivors from the same dangerous world, learning to trust each other in an even more dangerous universe. And that trust, more than any weapon or technology, would be humanity's greatest strength among the stars.